And good evening, Dodger fans. The Dodgers pull it out on a close one, 4-2, getting the 3-2 lead. It's your boys Alonso y Juan. Juan, I know in that ninth inning we tweeted about it, and I know you were sweating profusely. How do you feel after seeing your boy Blake Trinan go out and get that save?
What do I feel? I feel like Dave Roberts should go out and buy a lottery ticket right now, is what I feel like. His decision-making in this game worked out for the Dodgers' favor. What a difference a day makes. The Dodgers win. They are one way away from winning the World Series. It's great. I'm sure everyone's going to call me a fair weather fan or whatever, but that's the way the postseason rolls. This is the way baseball. Last night was a very emotional game. Today's game was very tense. Luckily, the Dodgers came out on the right end of it. So can't wait to get into tonight's game with you.
And big ups to Clayton Kershaw. Goes out and gets the win tonight on not having his best stuff either. He looked a little shaky, if you will, but he's now 2-0 in this World Series. Gets his 13th career postseason win. And again, he wasn't sharp, but he still went out there and battled. And also congratulations to him on getting 206 strikeouts in the World Series, which is the most in the postseason as well. And he just passed Verlander. And he went out and did the thing. He did what he needed to do. And like we talked about yesterday, Kershaw needed to have a big game tonight. And all things considered, he was able to keep them in it. Gave him those innings. He ate up those innings before getting into the bullpen. And what else can you say about the guy? He went out and did the thing.
Absolutely. Look, let's just get right into it. To me, the fourth inning was the game changer. Okay. What he did in that fourth inning to get out of that jam with no outs and Margot at third was so impressive. And I obviously it's not going to erase his postseason history, but the balls that you have to not panic, to not freak out. You have a runner on third, no outs, and you kind of felt, oh no, here it comes, right? The Dodgers get a 3-0. All of a sudden, it's a 3-2 lead, and like it always seems to happen, it's a little fluke hit that starts it, right? And for him to get out of there, to get out of that jam, I am so happy for him because of the amount of crap that he takes, and maybe some of it is deserved, okay? But for him, it just seemed like it was one of those things where Kershaw, and then not only to get out of it, but he was dominant after that. Like, he retired the next 5 in a row, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. I wish Roberts would have let him finish that sixth inning, but that leads me again to some of the decisions that Roberts made today. But that fourth inning, to me, was huge. It seemed to have taken the air out of it for the Rays. That being said, I will tell you this. Margot got such a great jump off of Kershaw. The balls that Margot had to try to steal home, and he almost pulled it off. The fact that Kershaw still threw him out and didn't balk, again, for anybody who's going to sit here and argue with me that Kershaw is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, that Kershaw's a choke artist would have balked. A choke artist would have thrown that ball to the backstop. The fact that Kershaw got out of that inning and kept the Dodgers in the lead was huge. And if the Dodgers pull this off, barring something crazy happening in Game 6 and 7, I could see Kershaw being the World Series MVP now, especially with Mookie slowing down a little bit.
No, and to your point, the fact that he did not get a balk right there was huge, because I think 99% of other pitchers get a balk in that situation because they're going to panic and try to get the ball as quickly as possible to home to avoid that issue. And by the way, too, the hats off to Margot. That's a ballsy move.
Yeah.
Whether it's a lefty or not, that's still a super ballsy move to try to steal home. So, and it was close even at that too, right? That could have been a momentum shifting play.
He had a great jump. He had a great jump. It was. And big ups to Max Muncie for calling it out too and letting Kershaw know he's going home.
No, and the other thing too is Kershaw. He when he pitches out of the stretch, if there's any mechanic of his, if you will, that's a little vulnerable, it is when he pitches out of the stretch. But the way that he was to able to stay on top of it and not get the balk was huge. And I think that's kind of where the cleanup started, if you will, on that end too. Max Muncy, he's starting to getting himself going, and we talked about it in our previous show that guys like him, guys like Bellinger needed to get their offense going and not just rely on the Corey Seagers of the world, right? As far as the intangibles with Max, that's another great too. To your point, where he had the wherewithal to make Kershaw aware of what was going on, and again that he crushed that ball, 434-foot bomb. You're doing it on both ends of the ball tonight. In stark contrast to last night to tonight, totally different feeling team, even if you will. Like it felt like they were fired up, getting it going. Obviously, how they were playing the small ball, if you will, in that first inning. But I'm sure you noticed that night and day outcomes as far as the game goes, but night and day, play, if you will, even from the team.
No, I mean you have to acknowledge the fact that the Dodgers didn't have that hangover that maybe a lot of other teams would have had from losing that game last night. They came out there, and you have to believe them. When they said they put it behind them, they played like they put it behind them. That was the best thing they could have done, was jump to that early lead today. And look, I just want to point this out. Does anybody, I know there's more dramatic bat flips, but does anybody have a quicker and sweeter bat flip than Max Muncy? I love when Max Muncy hits a bomb and just pimps it at the plate with that quick little bat flip of his. So it's nice to see Max Muncy hit that home run. But again, the fact that the Dodgers came out there, they were hard-nosed and they punched back. They hit the Rays early. Glasnow, I don't know if it was the effects of throwing 113 pitches, because he threw 33 pitches in that first inning today. It just seemed that, I don't know what Glasnow was doing in the previous league championship series, but the Dodgers had him figure it out. So I think it was huge that the Dodgers jumped to that early lead in this game.
Well, and I think what it was is I think they just got to him early. And with them getting to him early and getting that, the offense going and the bats going, I just think it threw him for a loop for sure. And he just wasn't able to settle in, even going 5 innings, right? And it's just one of those things where the Dodgers were aggressive and they were patient, and that's what the Dodgers need to do, right? Especially now, they're 1 win away from the World Series, and if they can kind of keep up this tempo going into the next game, which is not tomorrow, by the way. I keep forgetting that there's off days in this series. It's in 2 days from now. Then they have every chance to really, give themselves every opportunity to win the series come Tuesday at this point. And and with that said too, the Dodgers, all things considered, with that Rosarena, getting it going, and Kiermaier, who's just had himself a hell of a series as well, just getting it going. For the most part, they were able to control what the output was for the Rays, even with them being just as aggressive. Margot obviously trying to steal home there. That's just showing how aggressive they know they need to be. And all things considered, the Dodgers still were able, to get that controlled. I am curious to hear your take on this, because we talked about it a little bit off the air. Chris Taylor, he's had a couple mix-ups in consecutive games now. I am a little worried about that, because we're going now into a game clinching situation for the Dodgers, where every game now is a game clincher for them, right? And typically we don't really have those worries or those concerns with Chris Taylor. How are you feeling as far as that goes on that end as well?
I'm concerned about those aspects with certain players, because it always seems like with the Dodgers, it's one mistake snowballs into something and it turns into a huge inning for the other team. And that's the difference in the game, right? That's when Kershaw's ERA jumps from this to that, right? And that's why I thought it was so important what Kershaw did in that 4th inning. He limited the damage. We've talked about this throughout this entire series. Limit the damage, okay? There's a reason why both of these teams are playing in the World Series. They are good teams, okay? So they're going to find a way to score runs. We just have to limit the opportunities that they have. The Taylor thing, now I'm starting to wonder if the fact that he is not hitting is now affecting him on the field. You know, a lot of players do a good job. I mean, I think Mookie was a good example of that in the NLCS, where he didn't allow his offensive woes to affect his defense on the field. But, you know, prior to yesterday, Chris Taylor had struck out 5 times in 2 games, okay? He's been struggling. The times he has hit the ball hard, he's hit it right at somebody. So he's had bad luck, right? But I'm worried about that play yesterday in center field and that play at second base today. I'm wondering if something's going on. I've seen the responses on Twitter. People now are saying maybe we need to see Geeke. Now, Jock made a nice running catch in left field. I will tell you this. I still trust Chris Taylor in left field more than I trust Jock. All right? So if you are going to put Geeke at second, I understand that. But being that they're going to be facing Snell in Game 6, and depending on what you do on the DH situation, are you going to see Pollock out in left field? And then is Chris Taylor going to sit?
And I'm interested to see what they do because I mean at this point, you know, I suspect that all options are on the table as far as going for the gut shot, and that's what I think the Dodgers, you know, I think are, you know, they smell blood and I think they're trying to go for the kill, just kind of based on some of the stuff they're already starting to say in the post game remarks, if you will, and if you're just joining us, the Dodgers win Game 5, lead the series 3-2 on a score of 4-2. If you're just joining us, please, by all means, any comments or questions that you might have, send them our way via either Twitter or YouTube, or I believe it's Periscope where we stream on Twitter. We always welcome interaction from all of you guys, and likewise direct at us here on our Twitter handles. By all means, shoot us anything that you want to shoot us. But if you see, voice in the sky, Roger. Mm-hmm. So that's actually what I was going to bring up. So as you know, Tony Gonsolin has had his woes, and now we're running into this issue where Chris Taylor is like you said, he's struggling. He went 0 for 4 today. Will Smith also went 0 for 4 today. You know, so there's some concern there, right? As far as what to do on that end. If it were up to me, if Walker is willing to come out and be an opener, I would go with Walker because, you know, he's a gamer. You know, I mean, to quote Juan, he's the best big game pitcher that's been a Dodger since the Bulldog himself, Oral Hershiser. And I don't see why he wouldn't be opposed to come out and do 2 innings. The only caveat is do they want to have something in the tank for Game 7? So, I mean, that's kind of that's going to be a Walker Buehler decision, really, if to see how much he has in the gas. You know, tomorrow would be his side day, and then bullpen day would be the day after that. So, I mean, it's one of those things where he's kind of in schedule to be able to go a couple of innings. So, I mean, if they wanted to go for the gut shot, why not? But I don't know if they're afraid about the blisters, if you will. I mean, I know that's always going to be a thing in the back of the head because the pitcher's always going to say, I'm fine, I'm good. You know, I want to go. But if the blister is an issue, you know, what do you do there? I'm kind of curious to see what you think, Juan.
I think it's a huge risk to go with Buehler in Game 6. I understand the temptation to go with Buehler in Game 6. You know, let's put it out. Let's end it now. I mean, that's the thing that's kicking me right now is the fact that if they would have won last night, this series would be over. The Dodgers would be champions. You know, and this is what we had talked about. This is the scenario the Dodgers wanted this weekend. And this is why yesterday's game hurt so bad. And this is the reason why we were so emotional yesterday, because it was a missed opportunity. But here's the thing. Okay, if we go with Buehler in Game 6, now I'm not going to doubt Buehler because, as I said, that guy is a big game pitcher. All right, that guy goes out there, he talks the talk, and he walks it. Okay, but that is going to be, he's going to be going on 3 days rest. I don't know what Buehler's record is on 3 days rest. The fact that he's not healthy, the blister issue, to then ask him to go on 3 days rest. Let's say he goes, but let's say he only gives you 2 or 3 innings. Now that game turns into a bullpen game, okay? Your bullpen that is just, you don't know, it's a mystery box. You don't know what you're going to get. You lose that game. Now Game 7, you have the option of, do you bring back Urias on short rest and see how much he can give you? And then you're going to have 2 back-to-back bullpen games. Here is the thing. I get it that baseball has changed, and now everything is about using your bullpens. But this is where you feel it now. In these series, in these postseasons, when you overwork your bullpen because you don't have starters that are going to give you length, when you don't have starters that'll go 6, 7 on a consistent basis. So now you're on fumes. We're going into these next 2 games where that Dodger bullpen, you don't know. I mean, it's obvious that, and we talked about this the other night, it's obvious that Roberts doesn't trust the bullpen. So for me, it is a risk to go with Buehler. But if Buehler goes in there and tells you, hey, give me the damn ball, I don't know how you say no to him. I don't know how you talk, but maybe you throw the dice and hope that things go your way. Either way, I think right now the Rays are set up really well for Game 6 and going into Game 7. So maybe that's another reason to go with Buehler, because you just want to end it now.
Well, and I feel like, if you smell blood, go for it. Just because there's so many variables that have the potential of swinging the Rays' way, that it might be one of those things where it's worth the gamble. But the issue that you run into is if you lose Game 6, then who do you start Game 7?
Right.
And, that's where you bring in, okay, do we have Julio go on short rest? Do we do kind of a hodgepodge of Julio, Tony, Dustin, Clayton, Kershaw, and, somebody else, because at that point it's all hands on deck, right? It doesn't matter, right. Short rest, no rest, whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because obviously we know Blake Snell's going Game 6 and 7 if necessary. It's Charlie Morton, and they touched up Charlie Morton a little bit, and we know what Blake Snell brings to the table as well. But I mean, it's in my opinion, I think if I were to flip a coin, I would say if Walker is willing to go a couple of innings, and if you can save some for Game 7, do it. Just because with how these Rays have been hitting, you got to do something to keep them contained. And if you go with the mixture of Walker, Dustin May, even, and we'll talk about Dustin May here in a second. Alex Wood, who's had a little bit of success. I don't know if I use Blake Trinan in a high leverage situation again, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Why? And then Victor Gonzalez, maybe even, just kind of throw the kitchen sink at them. Joe Kelly, who has not been used, and I'm still surprised he hasn't really been used quite a bit, is another option, to kind of throw these guys off. But I mean, they have a depth of it, if you will. But the issue is, like you said, Dave doesn't trust the bullpen. It's obvious, it's evident, based on stuff that he's been saying as well. He doesn't trust the bullpen. There's a tweet that we shared amongst us. Read it back earlier. Dave said he needs to see how the game plays out before deciding have a role after pitching in back-to-back games. I don't just take that as a comment related to just Kenley. I look at it as he just doesn't trust the bullpen.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's obvious. And, I mean, let's just get into it now. His decisions today, I think, were head scratchers. And I think he got really, really lucky that they worked out for him, because I was expecting for Dodger Twitter to explode. Because, okay, taking Kershaw, he had retired 5 batters in a row. He made 2 pitches in that 6th inning, all right? And then 2 outs and nobody on, and he just pulls him out. And I'm sitting there going, what is he doing? And then the thing is, you heard this time and time again. The plan was they only wanted Kershaw to face 21 batters. And sure enough, after the 21st batter, Dave Roberts comes out and pulls him. And this is something that you and I have talked about. This whole thing of playing to the numbers or using your gut, using your instinct. If you see a guy is dealing, leave him in and get those outs, right? Today, it really made me feel like the Dodgers are being managed by a binder. And the binder is overthinking right now, and it might end up costing us the game. So the fact that he pulled Kershaw, the fact that he brought in Victor Gonzalez when he did bring in Victor Gonzalez, I didn't understand. I mean, the way Dustin May the way Dustin May was pitching today was much different than what he has pitched in his last 3 appearances. I would have felt more comfortable with that Dustin May facing Randy Arozarena than I was with Victor Gonzalez, right? Now, it might have been a different result. Randy Arozarena might have beat Dustin May, and we might have been going crazy right now. But if they go for this righty-lefty matchup, I just didn't, knowing the new rule that Victor Gonzalez was going to have to stay in there to face 3 batters, I didn't understand why you would do that, why you would allow him to face Arozarena.
I mean, again, it's like you said, some of it feels like they're just kind of relying on the matchup stats that they have, and it doesn't make any damn sense. Just because in this series, in my opinion, especially with the Rays, there's 3 or 4 guys that are making it super difficult to just try to contain. Obviously Arozarena, Kiermaier, Margot had himself a hell of a game today, even though he got thrown out there when he was trying to steal home. So I mean, it's one thing if it's 1, maybe even 2 guys, but when you're talking, you start talking 3, maybe even 4 guys that are really just wreaking havoc, and doesn't matter what's going on. That's another concern as well. I don't get, if I'm honest with you, the thing that I didn't get is they were cool with Dustin May throwing 30. And maybe, I don't know, to me it looked like they were trying to ride him, if you will, a little bit, even though he only went the 1.2. But 30 pitches for Dustin at this point is quite a bit of pitches. And then, but again, then you had to stick to 21 to Clayton. That's the thing I don't understand is, Clayton could have gone a little longer. He wasn't as sharp yet, right? But at the same time, he would have got them through the inning, eaten that inning, and then they're able to move on. So I mean, it's just, there's some of those things where like the attrition just doesn't add up with the logic, if you will.
And this is where you save pitches, right? This is where, like, if Kershaw, he'd only thrown 2 pitches. If Kershaw finishes that 6th inning and you bring out May in the 7th, you save some pitches for May. So maybe instead of throwing 30 pitches, maybe Dustin May only throws 25, throws 22. You just don't know. That's the thing where I just feel, and we talked about this, they get too cute. Why are you overthinking this? Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? If you see a guy, Kershaw had shown no signs of getting into trouble. I myself was just so surprised after getting out of that 4th inning. I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's laboring. Maybe it is time. Part of me thought he wasn't even going to come out for that 6th inning. I thought, all right, that's it. And I thought the reason why he was going to come out for that 6th inning was I thought Roberts was protecting Kershaw and Kershaw's ERA. He didn't want, okay, maybe this next inning might be a disaster. So that kind of stuff, I just feel the Dodgers were very lucky to get away with it tonight. I'm afraid we're going to pull that kind of stuff in Game 6 or Game 7, and we're not going to be so lucky then.
No, and Clayton Kershaw, he's won 2 games in this series for the first time in his postseason career. By the way, and it also came in the World Series. So I mean, that's again, it's we're talking about a guy that for anyone that wants to doubt that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, that's the most preposterous argument ever, because you go and you look at everything else. Roger, voice in the sky, you're waving your hand. What's going on?
Did he look like he was at the end?
No.
He look like he was at the end?
The way
you saw the way he was arguing with him on the mound. It looked like Roberts had to physically drag him off the mound.
Well, and then for me, again, and I've said this before on here, I think we talked about it in the NLCS. With Clayton, there's some giveaways that that he's gassed with the way that he's sitting in the dugout, stuff like that. He was pacing. So that tells me, he's got at least another half inning in him. At least. Let him go out there and get it done. And I get the cautiousness, if you will, because of the lineup that the Rays throw out there. And, to your point, as you said yesterday, the Rays moving up Arozarena in the lineup has been huge. It's been gigantic for them. Yeah. And to counter that, you have to play that chess match, right? So that's why I don't understand, if Clayton may not have been sharp, but he was still on. and he still had himself a solid line, had only the 2 earned runs, had only 2 walks, and had 6 Ks. For Kershaw, who has been known to have issues the second time you see him in a postseason series, he had himself a hell of a series as far as that goes, and that's assuming this is the last time we see him in the series. If they go Game 7, I expect him to throw at some point in Game 7.
Yes.
At whatever. It is official. So, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Like, I guess, they're going chalk, and I know at some point they want to protect Buehler too. So I mean, it's one of those that I'm not overly surprised by that move. But back to the Kershaw thing. I mean, it's just I feel like and again he has this unfair amount of pressure that a lot of it is not his fault. Because again, some of those postseason numbers are slightly deceiving as well. But I mean, it to me, the thing that is annoying about that is you go with the feel of your guy. But with the way, and obviously Dave knows Clayton well enough that when you see him pacing around like a caged animal in the dugout, he's still good. So that's the thing I don't get. And then if JT is lobbying you to keep that guy in the game, what are we doing?
Well, no, I mean, I think that was the residual effect of last night's game. I think you saw especially the criticism that Roberts took. I think today, but again, they're head-scratching moves. I think he was quick with the hook, but, he allowed May to go, as long as he did. But then just some of the decisions that he made, it's like, it feels like, they say that managers are good for about 5 wins a year, right? That the decisions that managers make really over a long regular season isn't going to make much of a difference. But in a postseason, I think that is magnified, right? So you don't want these decisions that if you're wrong on these decisions, that it's going to end up costing you a series. So it really felt to me like, again, it was just they were not trusting what they were seeing. They were just going with what the numbers were telling them. And I think a lot of it was also just what happened. He got burned last night. He didn't want to get burned again.
No, and you're right. And you know what? Speaking of managers and maybe being good for 5 wins a game, he just said something super interesting. So referring, to the Kenley Jansen thing, which is always going to be a burning question, is, in quote, he says, Kenley's high leverage. He was hesitant tonight because it would have been 3 days in a row, and that's why they went with Blake. So I'm still kind of confused by that as far as how they look at Kenley currently as high leverage. Just because he's been more of a liability, if you will, than he's been, a high leverage, pitcher. And that's no knock on Kenley, because of the history that he's had with this organization. But I mean, it still bears to mind the question: is he out managing himself? Is he out sacking himself out? And I dare say yes. Because again, for him to sit there and say what he said just now about Clayton, I don't get how I just don't get how he came to that conclusion. Because, even I, who I don't know all of, the ins and outs of Clayton's routine, but I've seen him pitch enough to know that he was still on and he still had stuff.
Well, but here's the thing. You're absolutely right. Here's why I don't buy that argument. This was Blake Treinen's 3rd night in a row that he pitched. So why is it okay for Blake Treinen to go 3 nights in a row and not Jansen? And I think Blake Treinen has been brought in high leverage situations in all 3 of those games. It's just one of those things where you're trying to protect Jansen. Okay, last night was very bad, and I get it. If you heard Jansen's comments after the game last night, yes, the balls were not hit hard over him, but they were mental lapses, right? He had 2 strikes. Roger, the voice in the sky, brought this up. He had 2 strikes on these guys. And that's what is a disturbing trend, is their inability to put these guys away when they have 2 strikes on them. Not only did he have 2 strikes on these guys, and he had 2 strikes on Renya Rosarena and ended up walking him. He had 2 strikes on Phillips and then makes a really poor pitch that ends up in a single. And if you look at the pictures, He then went on the mound on his knees. And I get it that he is a closer and his instinct isn't to go ahead and back up home plate. And I get it. He didn't expect Chris Taylor to bobble that ball in the outfield. But that to me, again, is what is going on with the mental aspect of the game, right? Okay, maybe he should have been, all right, I'm not going to back up home. But shouldn't he have been backing up third at that point? I mean, shouldn't he have been moving somewhere instead of just getting on his knees behind the mound going, oh, I can't believe this happened to me?
I mean, it's those fundamentals, right? Last night was a lapse in the fundamentals, and here we are. I'm kind of just baffled, if you will, about it, because I mean, ironically, something that Roberts also just said, I can't get caught up on the fans' reactions on removing Kershaw. Like, I get it. Like, I get that you're the shot caller, right? But at the same time, it's like, if you're going to make a move, you have to understand the scrutiny that's going to come with it, regardless if it's a fan base or an analyst with MLB Network or whatever, right? It's going to all be scrutinized one way or another. But
can I just stop you right there? And can we talk about that moment?
Sure.
I thought it was huge that you saw those Dodger fans in that stadium boo Roberts when he pulled Kershaw. And it made me think, if this goes left and the Dodgers don't end up winning the World Series, the amount of pressure that is going to be put on the Dodgers to get rid of Roberts. Do you agree with that?
No, I agree 1,000%. And the only response that I would have to that is, okay, if you want him fired, then you better have a list of guys that are better to replace him with. Right. Because I mean, that's the thing, is if you're going to let him go, right? But you better have a good, if not better, replacement to go with that is going to potentially get you over that hill, right? So, it's a two-way street. That's the way that I've always looked at it. And right now, the unfortunate thing is for those people that are calling for him to be fired, I can't think of a manager that's better than him that isn't potentially tainted in some capacity. Yeah, that's a shot at your ass, AJ Hinch. Or in a solid, gig where they're not going to leave. So I mean, it's a gigantic catch-22. But no, I agree. To the original point, there's going to be an immense amount of pressure on them if this goes sideways. Yes, Roger.
But I mean, Roger, were you surprised by the reaction of those fans actually booing him? Yeah. Right. But do you think they were booing because they didn't want Kershaw out, or they were booing because they were afraid of what was coming next by going to the bullpen? Yeah, and I just also found it really interesting. Did I see this correctly? Was Andrew Friedman in the dugout tonight?
I didn't see that.
Oh, okay.
No,
I thought they gave a shot of him in the dugout. He was wearing a mask, but I don't know if it was maybe an earlier shot from earlier in the game. But I was kind of taken aback. I'm not sure than what my eyes were seeing there.
Maybe he was in the little tunnel next to the dugout.
That's what it seemed like. So he can go there?
He can go in the tunnel. He just can't go in the actual dugout.
Okay.
And then I know they have, like, with protocols this year, it's all a little different too, with how everything is set up. So I mean, I'm sure that since he's a tier 1 guy, so I'm sure he's allowed free reign to go just about anywhere, except during the game. I know that he can't be in the dugout. I'm curious to hear your take though on how they decided to use the bullpen tonight. Obviously, we know what's happened now, but how surprised were you that they did go Dustin May right there?
Sooner or later, Dustin May is going to have to pull his weight in this series. I thought it was going to be more in Game 6 than I was today. All right. So the fact that he did it today, I was very surprised. I was very happy that we saw the Dustin May that we actually have been seeing all season. This guy looked today as a guy who was confident. He looked aggressive. He was attacking the hitters. I kind of wish he would have left him in after he gave that base hit, because he got an out right after that. I wanted to see, if there was a chance that he could work him out, only because it was obvious that there were certain guys in the bullpen that he didn't want to go to. I feel they are really protecting Gratterall. Now, I'm not sure if Gratterall maybe is nursing something. I don't know if Gratterall is just a guy who can't go back to back. But, I mean, these are the playoffs. I mean, this is the World Series, If this is your best guy, we need him out there. I don't understand why Joe Kelly. I guess maybe because Joe Kelly is wild and you don't want to bring him in a situation when you have runners on. But I am very surprised that it seems like they've stayed away from Joe Kelly. But if Gonsolin can't give you a lot, these are the guys. We're going to see Alex Wood on Game 6. We're going to see Joe Kelly. So I was very surprised, but I will say this. I do think Dustin May was instrumental in the victory, giving him the inning and 2/3 that he did give him.
No, and Dustin May, I wouldn't necessarily say redemption, but he went out and he had a better outing this go around than what he's been throwing out there. And he needed that, not only for the psyche, because I've talked about it a bunch, that you can definitely tell he's a guy that's not confident in any of his stuff. He stepped up and he stood to the occasion, and all you can do is tip your cap to him and congratulate that, right? By the way, I just saw this on Twitter as we, kind of to backtrack a little bit about Walker Buehler. Dave Roberts on Walker Buehler said, starting Walker Buehler on 3 days rest in Game 6 was not a consideration at all. They've never asked him to do that, and the blister issue complicates it. So, not overly surprised there. I mean, the only reason that I would have gone that way is just, in my mind, you go for the kill. But there's, as we've talked about, there's a bunch of things that complicate everything. And one of those issues is the blisters.
And that was one of the things I was curious about is, has Buehler ever gone on 3 days rest? So we got our answer right there. He hasn't. And it does seem like this Dodger front office, this management team is very risk averse. So, I'm not surprised by the decision to not have Buehler. But then again, the way things are going right now, I think it's lining up well for the Rays. I am very curious to see. This is going to be the second time that the Dodgers see Blake Snell. So I'm really curious to see the adjustment, because they started getting to him in that 5th inning and his last start before they pulled him. And the fact that Cash did not use Fairbanks tonight, he did not use Anderson, and because it's an elimination game for the Rays, I do expect that he's going to have a quick hook. I mean, Blake Snell was up in the bullpen in this game. So I don't know how much you're going to get from Blake Snell in Game 6. I hope the Dodgers make him work, but I am curious to see the adjustments. Maybe that's another reason why they just decided it's not worth it to take the risk with Buehler in Game 6.
Well, and to your point, the being risk adverse, that's why I'm kind of surprised that they've had a quick hook with Kershaw, if you will. Like, it felt like he had a quick hook. Like, I know that they wanted the 21 batters and they made an emphasis of that 21 number, but he didn't have a crazy pitch count. He was at 85 pitches. He, and so that's why, to me, it's like what is, it's either the stats are saying something. And I know, again, Kershaw's history of going twice in a postseason series isn't great. I know that. But again, something you mentioned, are they protecting his ERA to a certain degree? What is it? But at the same time, to me, it's like he didn't have really a whole lot of adversity, if you will, aside from that inning.
Yeah.
Other than that, he cruised. So that's why, to me, I'm a little surprised that they were so quick to pull him. But at the same time, I hope the day after tomorrow, they have the same quick hook on Gonsolin if he gets caught at
Yes.
adversity. And if they don't, then that's going to be interesting to see.
If they don't have that quick hook on Gonsolin, to me, they're conceding that game and they're focusing on Game 7.
Go ahead, Roger. No, I've said that too. I think if the opportunity arises, because it's obvious that Dave doesn't trust his bullpen, if in Game 6 you need him for an out, you're going to see Clayton Kershaw. Yes, yeah, I could see him there too. Also in Game 7, if you need him to go out and run an inning, I could see them doing that. I mean, there's going to be. I mean, obviously, if they make it to Game 7, which is worst case scenario, like we talked about last night, and you and I, Roger and Juan, have talked about off the air, that going to Game 7 is worst case scenario for the Dodgers. So I mean, hopefully it doesn't get to that point, because at that point, then you have no choice but to just empty out the bullpen and just go full bore, right? And Joe Kelly, a name that you mentioned a minute ago, it's been interesting to see him not really be used, because as someone pointed out to me earlier, what did we pay him for?
Yeah. But here's also the thing. The thing I get it. If it's a Game 7, it's all hands on deck. The reason why I don't want to see Kershaw come in to relieve Game 7 is you're asking a starter to do something that they're not used to. And, Alonso can speak to this better than anyone. When you're a baseball player and you get pulled out of your routine, it messes things up. Maybe that explains the struggles that he is going through, because he's trying to get adjusted to this new role that they have him in. Maybe the same thing can be said about Gonsolin. Now maybe Gonsolin's getting in more of a routine because he's starting to get more action. He did go 17 days without. To me, it just seems that Kershaw is a guy that is very process-oriented, and he has a very specific process when he's going to pitch. To then all of a sudden rush all of that to get him in, and I think that's the reason why he wasn't successful last year against the Nationals. Okay, when he got you out of that inning, I don't think he should have came back out in that inning, because again, he's not a reliever. It's not, you're messing up the routine. So I get all hands are on deck, and I get also I feel like there is that urge to try to get Kershaw on the mound when the Dodgers finally do it. But for me, for the Dodgers to be successful, this is the last time we see Kershaw. I think that would be the best case scenario for the Dodgers.
No, and I agree with you. In most instances, I would 1,000% agree with you. Unfortunately, we're just in the caveat of, obviously they being Roberts in the front office, because that's who gets the plans together. They don't trust this bullpen. It's obvious. It's evident that they don't. And obviously, as we go into the offseason, it's going to be interesting to see what comes of that and what changes are made there. But it's one of those things where some of the things that they're saying aren't adding up with what the actions are.
Right.
Blake Treinen going 3 games in a row, that doesn't really align with kind of what they're saying as far as Kershaw kind of having that quick hook. So I mean, it's going to be interesting how they continue to to do the thing. And again, it's interesting to see that Dave even acknowledged that Justin Turner lobbied him to keep Clayton out there. And again, it's just one of those things where some of it just doesn't add up. That's just the best way to put it. Now, as far as your point to the routine component, is a Kershaw who has closed out games, as he did in the NLCS a few years ago. He's been put in those situations, and he's reacted well. Obviously, there's the notorious home run that he gave up, I believe, against the Nationals, if I'm not mistaken. And there's instances where it can backfire, right? But if you don't trust your bullpen and you're forced your hand to do that, it's I don't know. It's a gamble one way or another, right? Especially with a guy that's so detail oriented as Clayton. But everyone's going to know going into that Game 7, if there is a Game 7. And granted, we're not sounding all the alarm bells. Is it possible there's a Game 7? Sure, anything's possible, right? But if they head into that, it's going to be curious to see how they even manage the bullpen in Game 6. Because, right, like you said, if there's a point where it's obvious that they're conceding, then it's going to be interesting to see how they decide to manage that bullpen in Game 6. Because if they don't give Tony a quick hook, then that's going to tell me, like you said, that they're conceding and they're moving on to Game 7, which again I think is worst case scenario given all the problems that we've had. But I want to hear your take on one thing. So as you recall, when they pulled Kershaw, Justin Turner was visibly upset. If you watch the clip, you see it. You know, Dave is saying whatever to him, and Clayton's talking into the glove, and you can definitely tell that Clayton's saying whatever. But Justin Turner is visibly upset. Like he is visibly upset that they're going to pull Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, we know out here on what's going on, and the Dodgers or the players themselves, they fundamentally follow that culture. What does that, if we were to read into it a little bit, how would you read that as far as the Justin Turner reaction to Dave pulling Clayton there?
Personally, I love seeing that from Justin Turner. Okay. That to me is a culmination of this guy's been in the playoffs for 7 straight years now, and he's tired of losing, and he wants to win, and he recognizes that Kershaw is our best chance to win. He's not in trouble. Why are you doing this? Again, it's like, are you watching the same thing that I'm watching? Actually, seeing Turner's reaction reminds me there's a great picture, and I don't know if the Dodger fans remember this. This was back when Don Mattingly was managing the Dodgers, and it was a Dodgers-Cardinals series. And it was one where it was Kershaw was struggling, and they were just leaving Kershaw out there to die. And there was this picture of Adrian Gonzalez pointing his finger. You don't know what is being said, but you just feel like what Adrian Gonzalez was telling Don Mattingly out there, what are you doing? Pull him, right? And that to me is something where, especially coming off of last night's disaster, I bet you those players on that field, when Baez came out in that 7th inning, were saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? I mean, did you not see what happened in the 6th inning? Why are you throwing him back out there? And I think it's just natural. These guys want to win. I get it that we get up there, we get on their cases, we tell them they suck. Why can't they just do the simplest thing as to win a baseball game? Because it's really, really hard. So these guys are trying. Baseball is a game of failure. Okay, so what you're trying to, in order to be successful in baseball, is to fail the least number of times. That's what baseball is. So for me, I don't find it to be a problem. I'm glad that Turner's doing it. I think Dave Roberts is a player's manager. I think a lot of the decisions that Roberts makes is to protect the players. So I don't think this would cause an issue between them. But I also hope that this means Roberts will start listening to his players. And if his players are telling him, hey, man, trust us, we're going to bring this home for you. Because in the end, I just think those gut decisions are the ones, like I said, I think that's what won the Rays the game yesterday, was how aggressive Cash was managing that game. So I don't have an issue with what Justin Turner did, and I don't think it's going to cause a problem in this locker room.
I don't think it'll cause a problem either. JT is obviously, the team leader, and he's for sure frustrated, like the rest of the fan bases, of a little bit of column A with Dave Roberts not managing by feel. Obviously a little bit of column B where he's been here for the ride, and the Dodgers just haven't been able to get over the hump, which is to get that ring, right? So I if anything, I look at it as a good thing. I'm reminded of something that I experienced in working in the game is John Lackey. I was around John Lackey for a long time. He's a pretty competitive dude, and Mike Scioscia was his manager, and they pulled him out of a game, and Lack was pissed. He was pissed. I mean, he straight up looked at Scioscia, didn't even cover the glove with the mouth. He wanted the cameras to see it, where he said, "Are you shitting me? You're going to pull me from this? This is my guy. Are you shitting me?" He said that over and over again to Scioscia. And Scioscia, say what you will about the dude, but the dude is respected as a manager. Dude is respected as a player's, manager, as a player's player. And Scioscia just, he told him, nope, it's time. And he did that by feel, right? He didn't go out there with analytics. Scioscia is known for that he's not an analytics guy. And but again, that sort of healthy back and forth, if you will, is sometimes needed in a clubhouse to also let everyone else know, hey, like we're still here trying to grind. So I mean, we're not on the same page, but this is where it's at. And that sort of conflict is healthy, I would say. And sometimes it's needed, especially in this situation where it's like, hey, dude, like you can't pull him. That's essentially what Justin said. There's an F-bomb in there, but he essentially said like you can't pull him. You can't pull him right now, and that's why I'm glad to see that, if I'm honest, because you really haven't seen a lot of that behind the scenes stuff, I guess, if you will, especially on the mound, because Kershaw had his mouth covered. Whatever Kershaw said, you don't see what he said, but you could definitely tell he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this right here? Why?" So I mean, it's good to see that. But again, kind of back to the overall point, I'm hopeful going into this game 6 that they have a short leash for Tony, because I am nervous about that. Because if Tony goes out there and does what he's done in these last few starts, I mean, that's the only reaction that I have to it, and it's concerning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing I want to bring up is this is now the third game, okay, where we've had a really a well-pitched game, okay? The Dodgers only gave up 2 runs, right? When they, with Kershaw, the first game that Kershaw pitched, they gave up 3 runs. And then the game that Buehler pitched, I think they only ended up giving up, was it 2 runs that game?
Yeah.
So the common thing in those 3 games was, again, Austin Barnes was behind the plate. I think this is something we discussed last night. I think now this is a trend. I think this is something that they cannot ignore. I would like to see Austin Barnes behind the plate for game 6. Hopefully it's just game 6 and this is over. But if there is a game 7, I trust Austin Barnes. And it seems like the Dodgers pitching staff has more confidence with Austin Barnes behind the plate because the results are just different. The results speak for themselves. I'm kind of wondering, was Dustin May a different pitcher tonight because Austin Barnes was behind the plate? If Austin Barnes was catching that game that May and Gonsolin was pitching, could they have maybe gotten out of there? Could they have limited the damage? I hoped that they are seriously considering Austin Barnes behind the plate for game 6.
I hope so too, because he is definitely a better game caller. Again, that's not a knock on Will Smith, but Will's young. Yes. And Austin, he's got the experience at this level, and it's one of those things where to me Austin is the natural and most logical fit going into that. And that's why I think, as we've predicted in the previous games, my prediction for important player, whatever you want to call him for that game, if he's in there, is Austin Barnes. I think Austin's going to be the caveat because he called a hell of a game tonight. And truthfully, if Austin is maybe not behind the plate when Margot tries to steal home, that could have also been a totally different outcome. And that's not a knock on Will Smith. It's just because he's so young and he's so green still that that could have had a totally different outcome. But Austin was way cool and collected, and they were able to get everything going the way that it was. So I mean, I'm hopeful though that Austin is in that situation. The other dude that I'm looking forward to getting it going is Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger had himself a good game today. You can definitely see that. You can definitely tell that he's not as I don't know, tight. I don't know if that's the right word, but he's definitely getting something going, and he's just not trying to crush the ball every single time he goes to the plate. And that's going to be important going into this 6. If they can play that small ball like they did today in the beginning of the game, that's going to be the key going into beating these Rays, because the Rays just don't go away. They're just going to grind you to death and just pound it and pound it and pound it. And the Dodgers are also capable of doing that, and they need to do the same, especially getting it going. The other thing that before I lead it off to you as we wrap up here, it's going to be interesting to see, because you made a point of this that I hadn't thought about because they've been playing in the bubble. The Dodgers are now going to be the home team. I'm curious to see if that's going to be a factor, since it's going to kind of change up the dynamic as far as everything goes. So I'm kind of curious to hear your take on that.
Honestly, I don't know if that's going to play as much a factor. Only the big factor I think it's going to play now is that the Dodgers will have their last at-bats. Because it seemed like that game last night, the winner of that game was going to be whoever hit last. Whoever was going to, in the old basketball adage, whoever has the ball last is going to win this game because of the back and forth element. I think that's the only thing that it's going to factor, is that the Dodgers are going to have those last at-bats. I think what's going to play more of a factor is this Rays team is a young team. And this is the first time, well, no, there was, actually they have faced it before. I'm sorry. How are they going to react to an elimination game in the World Series? Like, is Cash, going to start overthinking things the way Roberts is? Is Cash maybe going to pull Snell out too soon tomorrow? And, Castillo had a very nice bounce back game for the Rays today, but Loop did not look as sharp as he looked in previous appearances. That first appearance, Loop looked dominant. Ever since then, he's become a little more average. So now we're starting to factor into the Dodgers now are seeing these relievers a lot more. Same can be said about the Rays. The Rays are seeing a lot of the Dodgers relievers a lot. So to me, the real key is going to be how Cash is going to approach that game 6, if he's going to be as aggressive as he was in game 4.
There, as we wrap it up, I want to leave you with this quote. Dave Roberts tonight was asked after the game in the post game interview, by Tom Verducci. He just says, "Let's finish it off tomorrow." So I'm hopeful that Dave is going to go out there and be aggressive going into tomorrow, like Kevin Cash has been, because Cash has managed himself a series. If there was an MVP for non-field guys that are just doing the thing, and if the Rays win, it would for sure be Kevin Cash, because Kevin Cash has managed the series of a life that most people don't even manage once, right? And he's for sure out managing Dave Roberts, and I'm hopeful that day after tomorrow, Dave can go out there and just and manage by feel and not by some binder of some kind, like you said,
Yes.
because that's gonna be the key as well. Aside from those having your field general out there that is going to control everything. If Dave can just leave the binder be for those situations and just get it going to where the Dodgers are firing on all cylinders, then we're there. Mookie also obviously needs to step up, and so does if AJ Pollock is in the lineup. Jock Peterson has stepped up huge. So there everyone understands what's at stake. The one person that I hope understands that stake, especially after that comment, is Dave Roberts, because again, it's either fire Dave Roberts or Dave Roberts is a genius. There's no in between with this fan base. No in between. And we'll see. It's one of those things where that's the method of the madness, if you will, with that dude. And here we are. So on that note, we'll wrap this guy up.
Okay, before you wrap it up, I just want to point one thing out.
Sure.
The Dodgers are one win away from winning the World Series, okay? They have 2 games to win 1. This is a very different situation than it was in 2017. In 2017, they had to win 2 games. They had to win Game 6 and they had to win Game 7. So let's try to enjoy it as much as we can. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that the Dodgers are 1 win away from winning the World Series. So I just hope the same way that Dustin May bounced back today, that we see something from Gonsolin. And I don't expect Gonsolin to be anything, dominant, or it'd be great if he was. But if Gonsolin can keep us close, keep us in the game, this is where what we were talking about, having those last at-bats. I really think it's interesting that after that disaster last night, the veterans were the ones that stepped up today. Kershaw, Jock Peterson, scoring in that first inning, Max Muncie, the guys that have been there for a while. I was a little discouraged with Will Smith's performance at the plate today. I hope he doesn't have a little bit of a hangover from what happened from that game. But I think the veterans, the guys who have been there before, I mean, Mookie's won a World Series. So if Mookie can come up huge in Game 6, I mean, we've talked about it. I don't think anybody wants to see a Game 7. I think we want to see this end in Game 6. There's a part of me that is just kicking me at the what if. Today should have been the last day. I mean, the Dodgers should have won the World Series today. So don't lose sight of that, Dodger fans. I know last night was rough. Every person I ran into today, I was wearing my Dodger gear today as I was out about, running errands all day. And everybody walked up to me and was just like, There were some people that were just ready to crucify Jansen. Oh, and this is one more thing, too, that I think it is important to say. Kenley Jansen and his family received death threats. As anybody who watched this show last night saw that we were very critical of the Dodgers, and it was the whole team as a whole. In no way do we condone, and I think I speak for Alonso and I speak for Roger, in no way do we condone that kind of behavior. Okay? We love the Dodgers. We are passionate about baseball, but that is crossing the line, and that's something that's not even constructive, and it's just completely disgusting. So props to Jansen for putting up with all the crap that he puts up with. Our criticism is hopefully just sticking to baseball and nothing personal. But that being said, as I said, running out. But there was a couple of Dodger fans that I ran into because I had a hard time shaking last night's game. I had my head down. I didn't want to talk about it with anybody. But there was a couple of Dodger fans that I ran into tonight that told me, hey, man, the series is tied. We're going to win. We're going to win. So thank you to those Dodger fans who continue to be optimistic when us pessimists try to bring you guys down. So I just wanted to throw that out before you close out the show.
No, and to your point, the reason I didn't bring up any of that stuff is because I don't want to be the jinx. I don't want to be the old media jinx. I'll
be the jinx. I'll take credit for it if the Dodgers lose.
I'll do the Tim McCarver thing. The first team that wins 4 will win the World Series. Yes. So maybe that'll offset any sort of bad juju that may have been put out by the jinx. But on that note, by the way, I saw that about Kenley. I didn't even want to give it any attention because that's garbage. I mean, that's something that we don't condone, would never do here. And I hope none of you that support this are any of the trespassers, if you will, doing that, because that's garbage. Because I've said it before here. I'll say it again. Anything that we say about Kenley, it's not a knock on his character. It's not a knock on him as a human. It's just the baseball side of it. And, that sometimes gets lost in the fray because these guys have families. These guys are still humans, and we have to remember that. And I made that very clear last night in talking about Clayton Kershaw, that I feel like some of this pressure that he's been put on is unduly done. And same with Kenley. He's in a slump. It's just happening, unfortunately, in arguably what could be the biggest series in Dodgers history, because if they win this series, it's the first time since '88. So it's just one of those things, right? But to go out there and bash. And I saw Alana Rizzo tweet some stuff too, that I guess people were being homophobic and racist with her. Garbage. Like we don't support any of that, and don't condone any of that. So on that note, though, we'll go ahead and wrap this guy up. We will see you guys in a couple of days. Thank you guys for joining us. If you want to follow us, our Twitter handles are here below. Any questions you might have down, for the next couple of days, please shoot them our way. We'll engage as much as we can. If you need to go outside, please keep your distance, wear your mask, stay healthy, so that way we can all celebrate together in a couple of days, hopefully with a bottle of Martinelli's and some goggles on the internet. But until then, from myself and Juan and the voice in the sky, Roger, thank you for joining us here on the Dodgers Beat After the Game show, and we will talk to you guys later.